All right, good evening and welcome to the American Stream. My name is Peter Dabrowska. I will be your host. I've been wanting to start a podcast for a while now. Uh, it's been uh, it's been something. All right, good evening and welcome to the American Stream. My name is Peter Dabrowska. I will be your host. Now, I've been wanting to start a podcast, a YouTube live show for some time now, but I'm finally getting around to it. So I've been reporting the news, which I'm still doing, and I've also been writing a couple of books. One of them, which is published now, one of them, which is coming out in about a month or so. So thanks for joining me. This is going to be an America First sort of podcast. That's what I'm going to be focused on, and it just seemed like the right time to get down to it, given that this week has been a week of fake MAGA people exposing themselves at literally every turn. So I'm gonna do this broadcast. I'm planning right now. I'm not sure, but I think I'm gonna do this broadcast Monday through Friday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Primarily because the content is going to be, like I said, America First-centric. And as we all know, Nick Fuentes, who is a great American, does his podcast from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. I don't want to have any overlap there. I don't want to steal any thunder or anything like that. So I think we're going to do this 6 to 8 p.m. And we're going to see how it goes. I know I don't have a very professional setup right now. I'm moving actually in less than 2 months. So at that point, I think what I'll do is probably build myself a little bit of a studio. So right now, you're just going to get the unfiltered, very raw me and my opinions. And again, this is the American Stream. You get the pun on the American Dream. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. It's been an interesting 7 days in the MAGA movement. Last week, a video emerged of a certain, how do we say this, Twitter personality, Ashley St. Clair. She's a Turning Point USA influencer. I hate that term. I really don't understand what that term means. I guess it means that you're, semi-attractive and you'll put on the T-shirt and the MAGA hat and you'll make your whatever generic pro-America comments you're supposed to be making, and then they pay you money. So A video of our friend Ashley St. Clair, also known as Sex Laptop, which we will get into, it surfaces from her time on a podcast called, I don't know what the podcast is called, but it's run by The Scoop, the guy Steve Strange, whose real name is Justin McKinnon or whatever. And Steve does a podcast on the side with some nerd named Dylan, and the whole thing is just really cringeworthy. They're very dumb, not worthy of having your attention at all. So naturally, since Steve himself is a grifter, and we'll get into that too, they decided they would have Ashley St. Clair on, and they were talking about immigration, just very sort of high level immigration stuff, and Ashley, in kind of her dumb way, she says, well, Republicans, they're losing elections because they're talking about immigration too much. And I live in Colorado, and we have like 12 effing illegal immigrants here. It doesn't matter to us. And it's like, okay, well, first of all, that's not true. All right, I looked up the numbers. And Colorado has, according to Pew, 190,000 illegal immigrants, excuse me. And that's a conservative estimate because the Pew poll used data assuming that there are only like 11.5 million illegals here, which comes from Census Bureau data from like 2011. More recently, Yale came out with a study saying that likely there are 22.5 million illegals in the United States, and it could be anywhere up to 30 million, which I tend to believe is more the case. So conservative estimate, I would say the amount of illegal immigrants in the state of Colorado is, let's say, 300,000, which is a lot more than like 12, as Ashley claimed. Now, I didn't exactly expect a lot from Ashley, given her history. So around the same time as her piss poor, really dumb immigration comments came out, Ashley was also exposed as the e-girl that we all knew she was, right? They all turn out to be the same, every one of them. We all know who they are. Okay, they post generic selfies of their average size, and they put some kind of pro-America slogan on there, and they put on the MAGA hat, and they get 80,000 followers really fast, and they all turn out to be the same. These e-girls are all the same. So it turns out Ashley, when she was 16, she was running, or a teenager, I'm not sure if it was 16. When she was a teenager, she was running a Twitter account, and it was called Sex Laptop. And she was talking about all types of degenerate things, and she was posting even more scantily clad photos of herself back then than she posts now. And so it was the same sort of content that you would expect from any one of these know-nothing, brainless TPUSA grifters. And I wouldn't have a problem with Ashley. I'm against degeneracy in general. Let's put it that way. Let's be clear on that. But I don't care if you post scantily clad pictures of yourself to Twitter at age 16, or if you allegedly sell nudes at age 16, which is what some folks have said. What I do care about is once you put on the MAGA hat and you start representing the America First movement, and you become a public figure, I expect for you to behave in a certain way and to comport yourself the way that a conservative would, particularly on the most important issues that we're discussing on a daily basis, which, I mean, immigration, in my mind, it's something I focus on daily in my reporting, is the only issue, other than tech censorship, that we should even care about. Because, in 20 years, 25 years, another generation, it's going to be death by demographics in America. We know this. So for Sex Laptop to get up there on Scoophead Steve's dumb podcast show and say that Republicans are losing elections because they're focusing on illegal immigration is absolutely unacceptable for anybody who is supposed to represent conservatism or anything that I believe. And not only that, it's just incredibly dumb. If you remember why Trump got elected in 2016 against all odds, it was because he pushed an anti-illegal immigration agenda. We're going to build the wall. They got to go back. We're going to deport the illegals and so forth. Now, granted, Trump hasn't done a lot of that, and I've been very critical of him and will continue to be critical of him until he takes steps to actually secure the border like he said he would. But for somebody to come out and say that talking about illegal immigration is hurting Republicans is absolutely absurd. There was just a poll that came out the other day. I wrote a story on this that said that 30% of all Americans, so a third of the American population, actually wants to halt all immigration completely. Okay, so we're not talking just illegal immigration, we're talking legal and illegal immigration. And this is a sample of the entire population, Republicans, Democrats included. To say that immigration is a losing issue is about the dumbest thing that you could say. And so then, naturally, after that clip surfaced, well, she came back and she said on Twitter, obviously, sort of under the guise or under the support of, at the direction, I should say, of Charlie Kirk or somebody at TPUSA, right? They have to keep up appearances. So Sex Laptop comes back with a Twitter thread and says, well, some of my views I misstated on Scoophead Steve's podcast 3 months ago. She says, I was in the heat of a debate, and let me be very clear, I fully support President Trump's illegal immigration agenda. We need to build a wall to keep the illegals out. And of course, this is the exact type of response that you would expect from a MAGA grifter. It's, you got caught telling us what you actually believe, and once you started to take heat for it, you backed off immediately. This is one of the perfect signs of the Republican grifter, is a person who is conservative in name, but has no backbone and is unwilling to stand up for anything at all. So she really exposed herself. And not only that, hang on, I gotta check this out. Not only that, Sex Laptop claimed that she was in the heat of the debate, which was obviously a lie. I watched the debate, or the clip of the debate, and she's talking to Scoophead Steve, who was an absolute dunce, total egghead, who went on the Weekly Sweat, really hilarious, on Friday night, or Saturday night, maybe, I forget, you guys should check it out, and made himself look like the absolute fool that he is. But we'll get into him in a second. But he was completely agreeing with Ashley St. Clair, with Sex Laptop, when she said she was in the heat of a debate with him. You weren't in the heat of any debate. You're a liar. And we all know it. We all noticed it. So that video quickly triggered a bunch of sort of white knighting and protection of Sex Laptop by the typical grifting characters in TPUSA and sort of in the conservative Twitter sphere. And there were a lot of people that rushed to her defense. And these people made themselves vulnerable targets to be called grifters. Now, I'm going to give you my personal story, which happened right away when I started tweeting about Ashley's clip, Sex Laptops clip. Nearly immediately, Black Hannity, who, I mean, if there is no better way to tell that Black Hannity is a grifter. Black Hannity is RC Maxwell on Twitter. There's no better way to tell that Black Hannity is a grifter than the fact that he injected his race into his Twitter handle and then paired it with the sort of conservative idea of Hannity. I mean, there's nothing more that could possibly say, I am Charlie Kirk's token black person, than by making yourself a TPUSA affiliate in some way. I'm still unclear on what exactly he does for TPUSA, but he made it clear that he does have business with them, and saying, hey, I'm black and I'm a Trump supporter. Okay, there's no way that you could possibly make yourself look like a grifter more than by injecting your race where it does not need to be injected. Now, I'm half an Arab, okay? I am a majority Arab American male. Now, I could rebrand tomorrow. I could call myself the Arab Tucker Carlson. And you know what? It would probably be pretty popular for me to do that. I could slap on a MAGA hat. I could, and by the way, I wear a lot of hats. You guys are going to notice I have bad hair, so that's just something to look out for over the course of this show. I could slap on a MAGA hat, call myself Arab Tucker Carlson, and I could let Charlie Kirk drag me around like a show pony. But there's no dignity in that. I'm not willing to do that. I'm a conservative. It doesn't matter what I look like. My race is not something that I want to win on. I do not want you to look at me and say, well, Pete's an Arab conservative, so we have to think of his opinions differently. No, that's BS. That's nonsense. I want you to regard my opinions, because I comport myself with dignity, I want you to regard my opinions as you would regard the opinions of anybody else in this movement, white, black, brown, whatever. So anyways, Black Hannity comes into my Twitter DMs, unannounced, uninvited, and he starts giving me unsolicited advice. Now, I don't take unsolicited advice very well. I don't take solicited advice, period. I mean, I'm not good at taking advice. It's just not something I do. I am the master of my own destiny. That's what I believe. So if you're going to give me unsolicited advice, you should be prepared for backlash. And Black Hannity comes into my Twitter mentions, and he starts saying, could you stop tagging TPUSA in your tweets about Ashley, because TPUSA has nothing to do with this, and you're just chasing clout, or you're operating in bad faith, and this and that. And so I read it, and my immediate response is F off. And I said that to him. Now, I'm going to try not to curse on this podcast. This is going to be a family-friendly show. But I told Black Hannity basically to piss up a rope. Now, of course, he got very angry about that. And his claim, obviously on its face, doesn't stand up, that I shouldn't be tagging TPUSA in tweets criticizing one of its influencers. I mean, of course I'm going to tag them. Like, she represents them. She is the brand. They decided to make her the brand. And I'm supposed to not tag her because why? Because Black Hannity doesn't want me to. You know why Black Hannity doesn't want me to do it? It's because grifters stick together. And Black Hannity, too, is a grifter. So, Black Hannity's comments sort of sparked a back and forth between the two of us that's now gone on for far too long, and I can't make it clear enough to this guy. I just don't care about you, dude. I really would just prefer that we go our separate ways. There's nothing you can say to me that's going to make me change my mind about the fact that you are an ineffective parasite on the MAGA movement. It's just not going to happen. And he actually wants to fight me at the Demand Free Speech rally, which is totally beyond me. Black Hannity, dude, if you're watching, adults, we solve our problems with words, not with fists. So um, maybe consider that. But Black Hannity has business with TPUSA. So, of course, he's going to defend them when one of their people says something stupid. He's a grifter. And he comes to me and he says, well, I'll prove to you that I'm not a grifter. Here's a quote I gave to Gateway Pundit a year ago about how bad the Arizona GOP is. I guess he lives in Arizona. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, are you really trying to prove to me right now that you're not a grifter by telling me that you've criticized the GOP? That's your defense, Black Hannity, against my claim, my rightful claim, my correct claim that you're a grifter, that you've criticized the GOP. I think he said something like, I'm not afraid to tell the Republican Party how it is. Congratulations, Black Hannity. Neither were the 63 million Americans who voted for Donald Trump in 2016. What did you think that was? That was the American people throwing two throbbing middle fingers at the GOP and saying, we're done with you. You're useless. We want this guy who hasn't been part of your party, who's an outsider, to come represent us. You can't possibly prove that you're not a MAGA grifter by saying that you've criticized the GOP. I mean, that's like saying you're anti-abortion while you're walking into the Planned Parenthood clinic. You can't do it, Black Hannity. So I think that my criticism of you is rightful. I believe you are a grifter, and the reason I believe you're a grifter is because you're in this TPUSA sphere, right, of social media influencers. And by the way, just to be clear about Black Hannity, the only reason he got 20,000 followers or whatever he has on Twitter is because he got punched in the face at an Antifa rally. So that's where the sort of origin of his, I guess you would call it clout. I hate that word, but I guess you would call it clout. That's where it began. So congrats on that. And then he went to a White House party of some kind and took a picture with Diamond and Silk. And, here you are. Now you're supposed to be somebody that I listen to. But, you're not. Because, I recognize the charade, right? So Black Hannity is in this TPUSA sphere of influence, right? And I've given TPUSA a very fair shake over the last 2 years. Because when I started to get into politics in 2015 or so, I was really apolitical before that. But when I started to really get into politics and to understand what was happening in this world and started supporting Donald Trump and realizing that the mainstream press was full of nonsense and garbage, TPUSA was still sort of a relatively new organization. It was still grassroots. And so I went to some of their events. I went to one of their events in 2017, but I wasn't a student in 2015 or 16. I went to law school for a year in 17. Totally different story. I supported TPUSA. I gave them a really fair shake during the Trump presidency, looking at the amount of influence that they have and hoping that they would do the right thing and actually support the MAGA movement. That they would actually support America First. But did TPUSA do that? Well, after 3 years of observation, the answer is quite obviously no. We consistently see pictures of Charlie Kirk, with Donald Trump Jr. and with President Trump. Yet we don't have Charlie Kirk out in public saying, hey, Mr. President, we're friends. I represent this supposedly America First organization, TPUSA. Can you please build the wall that all your constituents were promised? No, of course not. Charlie Kirk's not going to do that because Charlie Kirk knows where his bread is buttered, right? He's got big donors now. A lot of them are neocons. A lot of them are the globalist types, and we know who the globalist types are. We won't get into that. But look, so Charlie Kirk isn't going to stand up for MAGA, and I gave him a fair shake, but a combination of watching what he's done over the last few years with TPUSA and this past week really caused me to like take a hard look at it and say, okay, we need to actively oppose TPUSA. We can't passively just say, oh, there's Charlie Kirk making a stupid tweet again about how illegals are bad, or gay sex in Botswana, woohoo, it's legal now. Like, we need to actively start fighting back against TPUSA, because it's very clear that TPUSA and all of the people in TPUSA's orbit who are making money off of it are simply grifters. And definition, by the way, of grifter, just in case this has to be explained, it had to be explained to Scoophead Steve on the Weekly Sweat. It's really hilarious. These are all the people who claim, they say, well, yeah, we're in this for the same reasons that you're in this. We're in this because we're America Firsters, and we believe in fighting against illegal immigration, and we believe in bringing jobs back to America, and the Republicans working on behalf of the American worker, and we're against tech censorship, and all of this stuff, right? But they don't actually believe that. They don't fight for it, right? These people are grifters. That's what a grifter does. It's TPUSA is a big grifting organization. It's the consultants, it's the lobbyists, it's the staffers. It's all these people, it's the legislators, it's all these people that come in and they campaign, they give you lip service, and they run the straw polls, and they say, well, look, all these people, they say they support, ending illegal immigration, so that's what I'm going to do when you elect me, and then they never do it because, they go in there and they get bought by the chamber and big business and so forth, and the banks, we all know who runs the banks, and so it's really just disappointing to see that TPUSA, which could have been something good, is cranking out people like Sex Laptop, and is cranking out people like Black Hannity. I mean, it's really an embarrassment. And so we have, not only do we have Black Hannity in my mentions, white knighting on behalf of Sex Laptop, but we also have certain other people in the conservative sphere, like Will Chamberlain, who are white knighting for this girl. And then these people, and they're tacitly coming out and saying, oh, well, this is like middle school. We all need to stop fighting. Well, guess what? And I want to make this very clear. I have, at this moment in time, nothing against Will Chamberlain. We've had a couple of dust-ups in the past. He blacklisted Nick Fuentes, which I thought was not a cool move of him. I really was disappointed to see that. He calls Nick a racist and all of these other unfounded claims. And I think that's nonsense. I think that's what leftists do. I had a dust-up with Will about a year ago, and this just kind of ties into the story, where I had written an article about a young woman who works at the Daily Wire, who is an old friend of ours, who used to, when I first met her, be part of the America First movement. But quickly, after she filmed the Trigglypuff video, and this is Cassie Dillon, for anybody who is not aware of who I'm talking about, Cassie Dillon went from being a hardcore Trump supporter to a Ben Shapiro Daily Wire bootlicker. And, speaking of grifters, I mean, there's nobody who's making more money off of this than Ben Shapiro. Is not actually forwarding any conservative. He's the millennial generation's Bill Kristol, the type that we need to nip in the bud before we move forward. So Cassie Dillon, back in the day when she was at Mount Holyoke, she filmed the Trigglypuff video, which went super viral. This was still back in the day when the internet was like relatively free. You could make fun of fat, idiotic liberals, screaming and waving their arms. And that was at a Milo Yiannopoulos speech at the college where she filmed that. So that video went viral, and all of a sudden she had a little bit of clout. There's that word again, clout. And at first she used it to support the Trump movement. And then she founded Lone Conservative. And she started getting some attention from the blue check marks on Twitter, the blue check marks in the conservative movement. And immediately I watched her, and I wrote briefly for Lone Conservative. It was the first time I ever got published, was by Lone Conservative. And I watched Cassie Dillon go from a full-fledged MAGA supporter to moving further and further. She had a dog. By the way, Cassie, here's a fun story for you. Cassie Dillon had a dog that she named Tucker, after Tucker Carlson. If she came out today, she wouldn't possibly come out today with any kind of pro Tucker Carlson message, right? Because Tucker Carlson has been deemed an adversary of her boss, Ben Shapiro, and, you know, these weak conservative Inc., like college Republican types sit there and say, well, Tucker's a racist because he talks about immigration. These like little, you know, pocket pen nerds. Cassie Dillon didn't used to be like that. She used to be very America First. So she starts to get a little bit of fame, and she immediately sells out to the Ben Shapiro crowd, to Daily Wire. She works there now. I haven't heard a whole lot from her recently. I'm not exactly sure what's been going on with that. But I had a dust-up, so bringing it back around, I had a dust-up with Will Chamberlain about a year ago when Cassie Dillon started speaking out against Milo Yiannopoulos, who made her famous after she filmed the Trigglypuff video at his event, at whatever college. I think it was her college. And so I wrote an article in conjunction with Milo that basically said, look at Cassie Dillon doing a complete 180 and now trashing the very person who's responsible for her persona. And I put the article up, and I guess Will Chamberlain read it or whatever. And I think he quote tweeted it, and he said, this is just you and Milo being assholes for like 700 words or something like that, right? He didn't approve of the article. He made it very clear that he was there in my mentions to white knight for Cassie Dillon. Now, this is way before, and so this is, I'll get into Will Chamberlain here in a second. And I think I said to him something like, thanks for the clicks or whatever, you know, like get out of my timeline. And we didn't really have any interaction after that. So I don't really have a beef with Will Chamberlain at the moment, but what I do see, I've noticed two things about Will Chamberlain. What I do see, number one, is that there's a pattern of white knighting, okay? Because he went and white knighted for Cassie Dillon, and very well could have made an enemy out of me. Fortunately for you, Will, I don't hold grudges. I'm a nice guy like that. He went out and could have made an enemy out of me on behalf of Cassie Dillon. Like, why? Cassie, what has Cassie Dillon done for you since you white knighted for her? Absolutely nothing, right? Well, now I see him behaving the same way with Sex Laptop, with Ashley St. Clair, saying, well, you know, she's young, she's 20 years old, she made a mistake. Well, guess what? Well, you blacklisted Nick Fuentes when he was 19. So I'm just going to call this like I see it. I mean, I don't have anything against you personally, but it's quite obvious what you're doing here. You're white knighting, and it's like, why are you white knighting, Will Chamberlain? What's in this for you, Will Chamberlain? Is it because the people you're sticking up for are semi-attractive and of the opposite gender? Like, could that be it? I don't know, Will Chamberlain. The other thing I know about Will Chamberlain is this. He was kind of in that, like, space, that neocon, Zionist space, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, definitely 2 years ago, when I first came into contact with him on the internet. He was not America First. But now he put the money up to buy Human Events with Raheem Kassam. And I'm just going to get this out there. I love Raheem. Raheem, you know, did great work at Breitbart, and I don't quite understand this partnership with Will Chamberlain, because Raheem was and always has been sort of America First. I don't see him as a grifter at this point, but I mean, we'll see what kind of path Will Chamberlain's money takes him down. Raheem did great work to get Trump elected. I mean, that was basically his main focus when he was at Breitbart London. So I see this pattern of people, of just these like weird kind of average dudes uh, who are in no way forwarding our movement at all. They're just kind of there. The only thing they can do is hurt us. I mean, that's it. They're not going to fight for us, and yet they're speaking on our behalf consistently and sticking up for people who don't believe what we believe. Why is it so hard to just be honest with yourself and drop somebody and say, you know what, like, it's obvious that Sex Laptop made her views clear. I'm sorry, it appears that she's not the conservative that she said she was. She's dropped. She's cut from the team. Thanks for playing. Why can't we do that? Why do we have loyalty to these people who, when they show us their true colors, are not on our side? Why do we keep them around? All we're doing by keeping them around is letting them continue to be a liability for us. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so, for Will to continue to back this girl up, for Black Hannity to back this girl up, for all these people who are saying, oh, well, this is middle school drama. No, it's more serious than that. It's way more serious than that. And I think that we need to, call them like we see them. When people who are part of our movement are not genuinely expressing the views of our movement, they are being grifters. And it doesn't have to be difficult for us to say that. We can just say it and move on. I'm not sure if people think that conservatism is like a drinking club for people who are right of center. I'm not sure if you guys are in this to make buddies and friends and Twitter pen pals that you can DM with your, most dark secrets, or, when you're drunk at 2 a.m. I don't know if you guys think that this is not a serious thing, that we don't have work to do here. But like when I got into this 4 years ago unprofessionally, like my first thought was like, how can I be a part of something that helps to save America? And somebody like Scoophead Steve will say, well, you're not going to save America, so why try? Well, Steve, we're going to get into you now. Steve, nihilism is not an ethos. Okay? Nihilism is not a system of beliefs. It's not cool for you to be a nihilist. Being a nihilist just makes you a loser. And it definitely ensures your spot on the sort of hierarchy of grifters. So, for anybody who doesn't know, the Scoophead Steve, as we're going to call him, old Scoophead, he runs this video website. It's called Now This. Or it's not called Now This, it's called The Scoop, but it's very similar to Now This. And Steve readily admits that he wanted to create a Now This, but for conservative media. Great idea. And what he did was, over the past year and a half or so, 2 years, he built up a very large audience of people, of conservatives, who are expecting him to run America First. This guy voted for Trump openly. He's a Trump supporter. He believes, or formerly believed, in the America First MAGA movement. So he starts this company, and then he takes up this space of America Firsters who want content like the content that is produced by Now This. And immediately after he starts seeing conservatives get banned from all forms of social media, what does Scoophead Steve do? Well, he doesn't fight back for those who are banned. He says, well, I've got a business to run. I've got money to make. You know what? I've decided I don't really care about politics anymore. I'm going to shift my platform over to a Gen Z pop culture type website. And when he was on the podcast where Sex Laptop said illegal immigration didn't matter, he vehemently agreed with her and said, well, actually, Sex Laptop said that illegal immigration was a losing issue for Republicans. Scoophead Steve said immigration doesn't matter. It's over. The white race is dead. Demographics are changing. 10 years, Texas is going to be blue. Arizona, so forth. I mean, we can all do math, Steve. Like, we understand what you're getting at. And maybe you're right. I mean, he could very well be right about this. We definitely need to take some action. They said there's no solution to illegal immigration. That's bogus. There is a solution that can be enacted right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. So Scoophead Steve, once he realizes that his business, his money is in jeopardy from the fact that conservatives are being censored on social media, he immediately insists that he has changed his personal views, and he changes his business model to reflect the change in his personal views. That is the definition of a grifter. So you come into this movement, you start making money off of people in this movement, and just when the people in this movement need you to fight for them the most, what do? You quit, and you move on to something else. Now, rather idiotically, Scoophead Steve is not a bright person. It's very obvious just by watching that podcast that he co-hosts. Or you should really, I keep pumping up the sweat here. Those guys were great with Scoophead Steve on Friday night. It's very clear when you look at Steve that he is not the brightest individual who has ever walked the earth. In fact, he says he graduated cum laude from college, and I think that's an indictment on the education system in this country, because if Scoophead Steve can do it, so can you, so can anybody else. But this guy is a grifter who comes in and occupies this space, and immediately when it gets difficult, he cedes all that ground back to the political left and says, well, I just can't do this anymore. And furthermore, what he's doing now is he's saying, well, I'm just reporting on current events, and I'm not putting any kind of spin on them. Yet, the videos that he's putting up, while he says, I no longer represent conservatism, the videos that he's consistently putting up, still, to this day, he put up a video about Wendy's supporting adoption, which is inherently political. Everything is political. You cannot extrapolate or I forget. I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say now. You can't get away from your identity once you're a political person, because everything is so political. But Scoophead Steve is making these videos, and he's saying, well, I'm done with politics. He's now switched his views on illegal immigration, can't be fixed, don't care about it, but he's still making money off of sort of conservative-leaning videos, while simultaneously trying to claim that he's out of the game. Steve, you're a grifter. We do not need people like you in our movement. Yet, people like him are everywhere in our movement. People like Black Hannity are everywhere in our movement. People like Sex Laptop are everywhere in this movement. And it's important. It's our duty. I mean, if we want this thing genuinely to continue, it is our duty to rid ourselves of these people. It's interesting to me because nobody really seems to have a problem taking up battles against the old sort of boomer conservatives in that used to be the people who spoke on behalf of the conservative movement, who failed to conserve anything. The Bill Kristols of the world, the David Frenches, the Jonah Goldbergs, all these people. Nobody, Chamberlain and Black Hand and all these people, they're not afraid to take on the boomer conservatives. Nobody's afraid to take on the boomer conservatives. But for some reason, when it comes time to take on the grifters of our movement, right? The actual, like the young people who are still grifting off of conservatism, for some reason we won't step up and we won't fight back against these people. And I think that's a shame. I think that we have the potential to sort of get the momentum back, I think it's pretty clear at this point that we've lost momentum right now, right? So we can get it back. but we have to keep bringing in people who are not afraid to speak out on controversial issues, and that's really the bottom line here, right? Um, it's almost like you can define a grifter by saying, well, a grifter is a person who says they're in it, but when the going gets tough, they back down, right? When the issues are difficult to discuss, particularly illegal immigration, they back down, right? And so that's what we have going on here. I don't want to belabor the point anymore. We're going to move on in just a second here to Kyle Kashuv, who is sort of tied into this. You might remember Kyle Kashuv used to be the director of high school outreach, I think, of Turning Point USA until a couple of months ago. So, Kyle Kashuv, formerly of TPUSA, a couple months back, Kyle, who is the epitome, Kyle, man, you are the epitome, you'd have to admit, of a holier-than-thou conservative. I mean, if ever there was a holier-than-thou conservative, Kyle Kashuv is that guy, right? I mean, he comes into this thing, he gets himself a blue check mark, he gets a bunch of followers because he survived a school shooting, wow, right? And immediately starts attacking other conservatives like Laura Loomer, like people who are actually, willing to fight on our behalf. And here's this know-nothing kid, this thin as a rail, dead-eyed kid, saying, starting to tell people like, what they should and should not be doing and saying. And it's like, who the hell are you? Kyle Kashuv, right? And so Kyle Kashuv is cruising along. He's the right wing. I put that in quotation marks because he's a soft conservative. Just like, the correct way to describe Kyle Kashuv would be to say that he is, Jonah Goldberg's grandson, right? I mean, they share the same exact ideology. This guy is a boomer conservative stuck in the body of whatever it is, like an 18-year-old or whatever. So anyways, a few months ago, you probably remember, Kyle Kashuv got himself caught up in a little bit of trouble because a couple years ago, Kyle Kashuv was in a study group, and they were using a Google document to do whatever it was they were doing, and Kyle Kashuv wrote the N-word about 150 times on the screen. Kyle, man, that's not a good look for somebody who is particularly for somebody, it's not a good look for anybody, but particularly for somebody who is a holier-than-thou type conservative. That is not a good look. I mean, either way, we know that Kyle knows how to spell one word real good. So Kyle gets busted. A bunch of his old classmates, they say, Kyle, we've had this document for a while. We were afraid to come forward with it. God knows why you would be afraid of Kyle Kashuv. And he gets busted. He gets busted in this gigantic racism scandal. Now, before, he had been accepted to Harvard College. This big, prestigious, like his idiot classmate, David Hogg, who is dumber than a box of rocks. I initially was the one actually who doxed his Reddit page. And from that, you can see, like, the kid literally can't spell cat. These are the people that they're admitting into Harvard. So Kyle Kashuv was supposed to go to Harvard with David Hogg, but he got caught up in this racism scandal. And once again, you have people making excuses on his behalf. So Kyle Kashuv comes in, and he immediately ingratiates himself with the sort of conservatives who have the right views, right? The true conservatives, the morally superior conservatives, the ones that get to tell all the other conservatives, what actual conservatism is, right? And this is who Kyle Kashuv ingratiates himself with. And so immediately, when they would have thrown anybody else under the bus, immediately, these people start sticking up for Kyle Kashuv, despite the fact that he was openly a racist and said the worst possible words you could possibly say in the English language today, and at least in my opinion, and did it like very publicly, like it was casual, like it was nothing. At age 16, as though at age 16 you shouldn't know better than that. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? But all of these people, the Caleb Holes of the world, and it was really funny. I was at the Trump Hotel drinking with Faith Goldie during CPAC, which was totally lame. So we blew out of there early, uh, and we were getting we had a few drinks. Let's put it that way. And we saw Kyle Kashuv, and we walked up to him because he was kind of like doing the Ben Shapiro like shill for the Daily Wire thing, and like we wanted to basically try and red pill him and say like, look, dude, like the conservatism you're pushing is going to die. Like it has no future. We're going to kill it. So like maybe consider switching to the sort of America First pro-Trump side of things and stop like riding this line and pretending that you're a conservative. Stop being Ben Shapiro's little bitch. Let's put it that way. I know I said no cursing. Everybody knows the rules. You get one curse per show. Everybody knows the rules. And Faith and I walked up to Kyle Kashuv and we started talking to him. And immediately this like short chump, and I'm not very tall. This guy's shorter than me. He's chubby. He's got acne on his face, blonde hair. I didn't know who the guy was. Immediately, he steps between Faith and I and Kyle, and he basically, shoos us away, tells us to get gone, like he's working security for Kyle Kashuv. And I only realized later it was Caleb Hull. Caleb Hull is one of these like very milquetoast, boring, egg-headed, blue check mark liberal or liberal. He is a liberal. He's a neoliberal who pretends to be a conservative on Twitter. And interacts with these dumb accounts like Comfortably Smug and Neon Taster and the Ben Shapiro types who are just totally boring people and who will never make a difference in this movement. So Caleb Hull is running security for Kyle Kashuv at CPAC, and people like Caleb Hull immediately after Kashuv's racism scandal breaks, they start defending Kyle Kashuv. And it's like, well, wait a second. Any of you would have thrown any America First person right under the bus immediately if that America First person had said anything even remotely as horrific as Kyle Kashuv did. The Reagan Battalion, which is a boomer Zionist neocon website. The Reagan Battalion was the one that first exposed the Milo Yiannopoulos video, where Milo's comments on young gay men having relationships with older gay men was sort of mischaracterized, taken out of context. But Reagan Battalion basically used it to say, hey, look, Milo supports pedophilia. Obviously not true, right? Well, the Reagan Battalion, who actively destroyed Milo, immediately went to bat for Kyle Kashuv and said, well, he's not a racist. He didn't mean these things. He was young. He was 16. It's like, wait a second. If we're all conservatives and we're all on the same team, why would you actively destroy one and support the other, actively defend the other? And the answer to that is because we're not all on the same team. It's because Reagan Battalion and the Kyle Kashuv types, the grifters, who have only come to prominence after Donald Trump won the most unwinnable election in history, it's because the grifters are sticking together. They're sticking together to keep the established conservative order, to stop Donald Trump and the America First movement from thrusting us into what they see as chaos. And really, it doesn't make any sense, right? The chaos that they don't want to be thrust into is closed borders. I mean, this isn't really that radical of an idea, yet somehow these, neocons, these Kyle Kashuv types, they're all on the same page. They are all at the very least sort of on the fence about Donald Trump and very public about being on the fence about Donald Trump. So, Kyle Kashuv got accepted to Harvard. Well, when the racism scandal broke, and I want to make this very clear, I do believe that people deserve second chances. I don't think that Kyle's life should be ruined for anything that he said when he was 16. I just don't believe that. I mean, there's room for forgiveness, right? We're people of God. But I do think there are repercussions to your actions, and I do not think that Kyle Kashuv has handled the repercussions of his actions like a man. In fact, I think he's acted kind of like a little bitch. Again, I said I wasn't going to curse, but everybody knows the rules. You get 2 curses per show. 2 curses per show. Everybody knows the rules. So this is my problem with Kashuv. So he got into Harvard, and the racism scandal broke, and immediately he put out a PR statement that said, it was obviously a very professionally written PR statement. Somebody put up some money for that. Maybe it was TPUSA. Who knows? He had resigned from his TPUSA post a week prior to that scandal, really hitting major news. So I think, he probably knew it was coming. So Kashuv had been accepted to Harvard, and today, I guess it's a month and a half, 2 months later after the scandal broke, today Kashuv announced that his Harvard acceptance had been rescinded. And he basically went on a 12 or 13 tweet thread playing the blame game. And instead of taking responsibility for his actions, he blamed literally everybody else around him. And so let me read some of these tweets to you here. And so this is really where I have an issue with Kashuv. When the racism scandal first broke, I wasn't willing to cut him a whole lot of slack. I mean, racism is racism, right? The N-word is the N-word is the N-word. You come into this game, you call all my friends alt-right, you call all of us, you insinuate that we're racists, you insinuate that we're extremists, that we're somehow the other, and it turns out you're the one who's using this word all the time, this crazy racist term, not us, you, right? So I didn't have a whole lot of sympathy for him when the scandal broke. And to be honest with you, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for him now either, because of what he said today when he talked about Harvard rescinding his admissions. He said, after I issued this apology, this is a quote, after I issued this apology, meaning after I issued the apology for my racist comments, speculative articles were written, my peers used the opportunity to attack me, and my life was once again reduced to a headline. Okay, so Kyle is saying that my actions as a member of the media, I assume that's what he means when he says, my peers used the opportunity to attack me and speculative articles were written. How could you possibly... What was it that I wrote about you that was speculative is what I want to know. It was stone cold fact. Dude, we have the screenshots, all right, man? How many times can you write the N-word on the screen, dude? And he says his life is reduced to a headline. So what he's doing is he's trying to, garner empathy or garner sympathy from you. He's saying, this isn't. I'm not wholly to blame here. The media really played this up, and my life is being reduced to a headline. Oh, poor me! Please have pity on me. Have mercy on me. No. This is the number one rule of conservatism is what? It's personal responsibility. Nobody forced you to do what you did, Kyle Kashuv. Nobody forced you to say the N-word. I don't care how young you were. Age 16, you should be old enough to understand that using the N-word is ridiculous. I mean, I went to an all-male high school. You can only imagine the things that flew around the hallways in that place. Nobody ever said the N-word because we had enough respect for our fellow classmates who were black to where we just wouldn't do that. Other terms, most all other terms were in bounds. That word was not. We knew that. And so now you're coming out and you're failing to take unequivocal responsibility for your actions, and you're blaming others, including the media, saying, speculative articles were written. There was no speculation. We all reported on exactly what you said. Have a nice day. So then he goes on. He says, after the story broke, former peers and political opponents began contacting Harvard, urging them to rescind me. Harvard then sent this letter stating that Harvard reserves the right to withdraw an offer of admission. So there were some people, I know Laura Loomer was included, and she's taking some heat for this or whatever, but she really doesn't like Kyle Kashuv because Kyle Kashuv attacked her, basically called her insane when she handcuffed herself to Twitter after she was banned from Twitter. So Kyle didn't have any empathy for Laura Loomer when she was banned from big tech platforms, right, and basically unpersoned. But somehow Laura was supposed to have empathy for Kyle when his racism scandal broke. I don't exactly understand why he would think, that would be the way it would work. But she did on her Telegram urge people to contact Harvard and say Harvard should rescind Kyle Kashuv's admission. So that's exactly what happened. And I think the Daily Beast wrote a headline today basically blaming Loomer, saying that Loomer was the one who made it happen, right? It's not entirely true. I mean, Harvard's going to do what Harvard's going to do. And once again, the issue I have here is Kyle Kashuv is blaming other people, right? It's like, if you hadn't said what you said, this wouldn't be an issue at all. You did it. Bottom line, you did it, right? Not anybody else, not Laura Loomer, not random internet people. You were the genesis of this entire scandal. So own up to it like a man and move on. And frankly, I think that you're better off without Harvard. I think you'd be better off lighting a pile of money on fire than going to any college. Never mind Harvard. What do you think is going to happen at Harvard? You're going to sit next to David Hogg in your Lit 101 class? Like, what? I mean, what are you going to do? It's going to be a big, giant circle, what. But somehow you want to, act like this is the end of your life. It's not, dude. It's not. The repercussions here for your actions are severe, but, you're not losing everything. Don't even go to, you already have the persona. Why would you even bother going to college? I don't get it. But anyway, so, it continues on. Kyle preemptively wanted to work with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to seek guidance on how to right this wrong and work with them once I was on campus. And it's like, so saying this proves that Kyle doesn't understand how the political left operates, right? The political left sets these rules about racism, right? And they have these offices of diversity and inclusion where they say, well, look, we're all about equality, and we're all about tolerance, and we're all about everybody being equally represented in all things ever. But they never play by these rules, right? When it's one of theirs who sort of breaks these rules, like Ralph Northam did with the blackface KKK photo, also broken by our website, they don't play by these rules. The left doesn't care when the racists are on their side. The left only cares when racists are on the Republican side, when they can beat them over the head and use them as clubs. So for Kyle to go groveling at the feet of the leftists in Harvard's Office of Diversity and Inclusion, it's just ridiculous to me. It just doesn't rub me the right way. I mean, it shows to me that he doesn't really what did you think they were going to do? Did you think that they were going to look at you and say, yeah, we know that that you are a very outspoken, very high-profile conservative who's coming to our campus to cause trouble and to fight all of our leftist practices, and we know that you're only a liability to us, and we know that you're going to cause major problems on this campus. But you know what? We're going to give you a pass, and we're going to let you make it right. No, it's not how this is going to work. Okay, the left does not play by its own rules. They do not give people second chances when they can instead use the situation to club you over the head, right? It's just the way it works. It's vicious, and I understand that. Maybe you don't agree with it, but Kyle, man, I mean, that's just how life works. You're young, you'll get there. So, he continues on this big long tirade, and then what he does is he pivots to the left, and I find this very interesting. So let me just find the tweets here. I'm a jeweler, so I will often be jeweling on this podcast. It's a lot harder to jewel during a podcast when you have to do all the talking than it is when you're a guest on the podcast and somebody else talks. Lessons from episode 1. So, back to it. Kyle, man, then what he does is he takes a turn towards using the leftist tactics, right? He says, Harvard deciding that someone can't grow, especially after a life-altering shooting event, like the shooting, is deeply concerning. If any institution should understand growth, it's Harvard, which is looked to as a pinnacle of higher education despite its checkered past. Okay, so here, what Kyle's about to do is he's about to go and say Harvard was founded by white people, and thus it is an inherently racist institution. That's what he's implying here. He's not saying it explicitly, but he's implying it. So he's using the same logic that the Antifa people use when they tear down Confederate statues, right? They're saying this is an inherently racist white supremacist symbol, so it must be torn down. This is the logic that Kyle's about to get into here. And he says, throughout its history, Harvard's faculty has included slave owners, segregationists, bigots, and anti-Semites. If Harvard is suggesting that growth isn't possible and that our past defines our future, then Harvard is an inherently racist institution. He says, but I don't believe that, just as a sort of, footnote. I don't believe that. I don't believe Harvard is inherently racist, even though I just accused them of being inherently racist, right? And so this to me is the part, you can blame me or the media or Laura Loomer or anybody else for getting you sort of expelled from Harvard or whatever. But this is the part to me that's really uncouth, right? This is adopting the tactics that we are supposed to explicitly hate, that people in this movement who aren't grifters explicitly hate, and trying to use it against Harvard. And I hate that I'm having to defend Harvard. I would never defend Harvard under ordinary circumstances. But here we are. Here I am defending Harvard because Kashuv seems to think that the rules don't apply to it. If Harvard is suggesting that growth isn't possible and that our past defines our future, then Harvard is an inherently racist institution. No, Harvard is not an inherently racist institution, Kyle, because it was founded by white people who owned slaves. Harvard is just using this opportunity to get rid of you. That's what they're doing. They're being opportunists. And in real life, you're going to have to deal with opportunists like the Harvard admissions people who saw this very easy, straightforward way to get rid of you and took advantage of it. Sorry, but that's just the way it works. This is where you get really uncouth. This is where I really start to have a problem with this. And then he goes on, he says, so what now? I'm figuring it out. I had given up huge scholarships to go to Harvard. The deadline for accepting other college offers had ended. Now, I was under the impression, I'm kind of confused about this, I was under the impression that Kyle was taking a gap year where he wasn't going to actually go to school. So I'm not sure that what exactly he means by the offer for, or the deadline for accepting other college offers. I thought he was taking a year off. I thought it didn't matter. I thought if he wasn't going to go to Harvard, he was going to have to reapply anyways. But that's sort of besides the point. So here we have Kyle, who's now back in the public eye for his Harvard acceptance being revoked. But it ties into the bigger theme here of grifters, right? So he's using the left's tactics to defend himself, and he's blaming other conservatives and the media and all these other people besides himself for this, when he's supposed to be a self-reliant conservative who believes in personal responsibility. Well, Kyle Kashuv is not on our team. Once again, he's a grifter. He used the shooting of his classmates, a very unfortunate situation, to step up and garner fame and to, be the NRA's sort of pseudo-spokesman and be Ben Shapiro's little buddy and, get some bylines on the dailywire.com. But I have to tell you something about Kyle Kashuv. Kyle Kashuv never was really pro Second Amendment. All right? So I pulled up some info on Kyle earlier because I remembered distinctly that he caught some flack for not exactly defending the Second Amendment as you would expect an America First person to do. Kyle is not America First. He's a grifter. So, he wrote this article for the Daily Wire where he was rebutting a New York Times article by, I think it was Nicholas Kristof. And here's what he had to say. So Kristof was vying for people for a legislature to pass red flag laws, right, that allow you to that allow the federal government basically to come in and set certain guidelines that would allow, and the guidelines are unspecified, they're undefined. They would get to be defined by like government bureaucrats, right? So this is a totally horrible idea. And these red flag laws, if passed, would basically stop people from being able to purchase weapons. Terrible idea. Here's the first thing Kyle Kashuv has to say about red flag laws in his Daily Wire article. He says, red flag laws are implemented poorly. In theory, they can be very effective in removing firearms from people who are perhaps dangerous, but who aren't necessarily mentally ill or meet the high standards for mental health adjudication. I mean, here's Kyle Kashuv saying red flag laws would be okay if they were implemented properly. Does that sound like a conservative viewpoint to anybody? Does that sound like somebody who's not grifting off of our movement? Like something that somebody who's not grifting off of our movement would say? Of course not, right? Of course that's not what somebody who's not grifting off of our movement would say. Like, we're supposed to be pro-Second Amendment. Pro-Second Amendment means that I should be able to walk into a gun store and buy a rocket launcher, sling it over my shoulder, and walk down the city streets outside my window. That's what being pro-Second Amendment means. It doesn't mean, even theoretically, ceding ground to the left on gun laws. In fact, we should be going on offense for gun laws. I've never understood this. I don't understand why the conversation around guns, well, I do understand why the conversation around guns is always this way. It's because of the people who get to talk about guns with, the large platforms are always these type of spineless shills, like Kyle Kashuv. And what they do is, instead of going on offense, they are consistently on defense, and they're thinking about what they can cede to the left without being perceived as anti-Second Amendment by the right. And my whole point is, if you're even thinking about ceding any ground to anybody, you are already wrong. Like, you're not doing this correctly. And so, in my opinion, we ought to be on offense, particularly when it comes to the issue of guns. I mean, I go on offense all the time. Offense all the time is my only strategy. But we ought to be on offense, particularly in the area of guns. We ought not to be saying, okay, we will let you take this right away from us, but just let us keep this right. We ought to be saying, you will give us X, Y, and Z rights back that you've already taken. Federal background checks? No thanks. Don't need them. Right? Bump stock ban? No thanks. Don't need it. Right? Any of these laws that infringe upon your God-given right to own a firearm, we ought to be actively trying to take back. This is a big problem I have with the NRA, by the way. Because the NRA is it's a grifting organization. It takes, tens of millions of dollars in donations, but since its existence, we've only lost gun rights in America. We haven't gained them. We've only lost them. And so, constantly they're answering to the gun grabbers, and they're saying, okay, well, we'll give in to you on this, but next time, we're going to hold our ground, next time. And it's just never the case. It's never what ends up happening. So, Kashuv builds his entire brand as a TPUSA spokesman and as a supposed conservative activist by supposedly being the pro-Second Amendment guy, the answer to David Hogg. And he's not even really that. And so when you look at it, the house of cards sort of collapses, right? And so at this point, I'm having a hard time empathizing with Kyle Kashuv. Like I said, I think he's a part of the grifter movement. I mean, he's definitely a part of the grifter movement. Let's be honest. I don't think that his life deserves to be ruined for something he did at age 16, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen to him. I think a lot of people who are defending him are operating on the premise that since he's not going to Harvard now, his life is somehow over. I mean, that's a ridiculous premise. You don't need Harvard or any college or any degree or any certificate or anything to go out and make something of yourself. You just have to go do it, right? So that's my piece on Kashuv. Now, I don't know if I'm going to make the 2-hour mark here. We're at 7:15. Again, this is a pilot episode. You're watching the American Stream with Peter Dabrowska. This is an America First-centric program. We're going to be discussing news, the topic du jour. We're going to be ruining grifters. We're going to be crushing the neocons. We're going to be crushing everybody who calls us alt-right, who tries to destroy our movement, the people who actually want closed borders. We're going to be destroying the neocons. We're going to be destroying the Bill Kristols of the world. And, of course, we will always be defending ourselves against the radical left, which is taking over. So, I want to tell you something. I want to talk to you a little bit about something that our federal government is doing, which is really a no-go in my book. So one of my big beats, I cover illegal immigration. So I'm the guy who gets to write all the stories, or who has willfully taken up the position of writing all the stories about all of the horrific crimes that illegal aliens commit. And I write about this on a daily basis, and it's one of the reasons why I get so frustrated with especially the grifter conservatives like Sex Laptop who say immigration's not a big deal. It's because I'm looking at this stuff every single day, and I'm going, like, how could you look at these horrific crimes and possibly even think that we should, be not taking any action? How could you possibly think we should be backing off this issue? It's ridiculous. So anyhow, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they're taking a new step here, and it's Pride Month now. Remember this, so I want you to consider what I'm about to say against the backdrop of it is now Pride Month. Okay. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is now bragging about how tolerant they are to transgender illegal aliens. In fact, ICE is so tolerant to transgender illegal aliens who are detained in ICE custody waiting for asylum hearings or refugeeism hearings, most of which, as we know, are not approved by immigration judges. Okay. ICE is so tolerant towards these people that they actually opened up their very first dedicated transgender unit. And guess who gets to pay for that? You do, with your tax dollars, okay? So not only are we not deporting these illegals who crossed our borders unlawfully, who spit all over the rule of law, not only are we not deporting them, not only are we feeding them and housing them and giving them clothes and baths and showers and all the necessities of life, not only are we paying for that, but now ICE, and you and I subsequently as the taxpayer, now we have to attempt to pander, to cater to those among the lawbreakers who are also transgender people. And I've got nothing against the transgender community, of course. We love the transgender people. We love the LGBT community on this show. We are a very tolerant and accepting show. We have a very tolerant and accepting audience. But this is beyond the pale. I mean, all right, so we have an article up on our site. I don't want to make it clear, too, I'm not speaking on behalf of Big League Politics when I do this show. These views are my own. I do write for Big League Politics, but the views that I'm expressing here are mine. They're not the views of my employer. I just feel like I should say that in case I go off the rails one day. That day won't be today, but it might be in the future. So anyhow, transgender migrants were shown how to braid their hair to accentuate their femininity work on their gardening skills, which is not a bad use for I guess uh, the newly ordained females of the bunch. Using elliptical machines, I guess that's something that's particular only to transgender people. I'm not sure. Shooting hoops, playing volleyball, enjoying meals, writing leisurely, enjoying medical care, reading in a library, using you get the idea. So what we're doing here is we've created a special unit to cater specifically to transgender people. That is called the Cibola County Correctional Center. It's in Milan, New Mexico, and ICE put up all of these like photos just showing how tolerant and accepting they are, and how they're catering to the transgender community. Um, Guys, I hate to break this to you, but like, this is like, we are not a serious country right now. Like, the people who are in power are not serious about closing our borders. If this is what the people who are running our country are spending their time doing, instead of working to close the borders and to deport the illegal immigrants who exist here today, and to fix immigration loopholes, and to get us back on track so that we're not going to die of demographic change, which is already happening, then I don't really understand how we could consider ourselves to be a serious nation at this point. We are letting ourselves not only be invaded by migrants, okay, but we're also paying for them to transition, to be comfortable while they transition, while they are in our care. And guess what? The left doesn't care. The fact that these people are detained and not roaming the streets is something that the left already has a problem with. Does ICE think, again, this is us capitulating to the political right. Why are we doing this? Does ICE think that by acting like they're tolerant and compassionate towards transgender people, that somehow the left is going to come around and say, you know what, oh, actually, ICE is a pretty good organization? No! The left wants to abolish ICE. Okay? They want to abolish all law enforcement. Right? Catering to transgender detainees in our migrant camps is not something that should be on anybody's priority list anywhere. Never mind at the top of the priority list. Never mind being implemented. So yeah, I mean, I found this to be an interesting sort of use of our money. I mean, we've got money in the budget for this, right? But we don't have money in the budget. We can't find any money in the budget to build a wall. Well, it's not that we can't find any money. It's that we don't want to. We won't do it. Republicans won't do it. Republicans didn't do it in 2017, 2016, 2017, and all the way through November of 2018, when we had both chambers of commerce. Chambers of Congress, excuse me. We didn't secure the border. We should have secured the border then. We didn't do it because of Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy and these bought and paid for by the globalists, big Koch brothers funded sort of spineless politicians who don't do anything except capitulate to their giant donors, their giant lobbyists, right? So we didn't secure the border when we had the opportunity to do it, through the legislature. We haven't secured the border yet, still. Trump has not done everything in his power to close the border. I'm not as black-pilled as Scoophead Steve is on this issue, where I'm saying it's over. We might as well just pack it in. Though I do, to some extent, agree, and I think that this is important to note, that if you look at all of the problems that America has as a whole, we're not going to vote our way out of this. I mean, we're kind of beyond political solutions at this point. I do think that there's some merit to saying that. But, just the fact that Trump hasn't been able to come through, the Republicans, when they had the Congress, weren't able to come through. Nobody's even talking about border security or building a wall right now. Sometimes, every now and then Trump sort of squeezes out a tweet about it, but there's way more he could be doing. He doesn't really need the legislature to build a wall. I explained this in a Periscope the other day. Some of you guys might have watched this. It was actually in response to that sex laptop clip with the scoophead Steve. Um, I was explaining like so back when Trump first became president, and this was one of the most awesome moments of his presidency. Like he peaked really fast. He said he basically banned immigration or movement really from 7 majority Muslim nations. Now that they called it the Muslim ban, but it wasn't really a Muslim ban. It was a ban based on nationality, which is why it was upheld by the Supreme Court. Right? There was no discrimination against a particular religion. Uh, we were discriminating based on nationality, which there's no law that says we can't do that. In my opinion, we should be able to discriminate against whomever we please as Americans. I don't understand why immigrants get to benefit from our Constitution, illegal immigrants at least. It's for us, it's not for them, but that's a different story. Uh, so Trump bans immigration from 7 Muslim majority nations. And now people are saying, oh, well, we lost the legislature. There's nothing we can do about illegal immigration. It's like, yes, we can. The answer is very simple. We can do exactly what we did to the 7 majority Muslim nations. I think it was like Syria, Somalia. We banned immigration from all these places. We said if you are from these places, you are not allowed to enter into the United States, period. End of story. Doesn't matter what your religion is, what your nationality is, who you are. Have a nice day. Well, we could do the same exact thing with Mexico. We could do the same exact thing with the Central American countries, with El Salvador, Honduras. We could do it with what's the other big one where we get a lot of Guatemala. We could do it with even the South American countries where we get a lot of illegal aliens from. We could put a halt on immigration. Trump, when I say we, I mean Trump could put a halt on immigration from all of these nations tomorrow, and that would be the solution to the immigration crisis. Then you give yourself at least you buy yourself some time, hopefully to secure the border at some point, and maybe even, I mean, this is way out there, I know, maybe even to begin deporting some of the illegal immigrants who are residing in America today. So I'm going to cut it. We are at an hour and a half. It's been an awesome time doing this show for the first time. It's been a great experience. I will be back with you tomorrow, which I believe tomorrow is Tuesday, so I'll be back at 6 o'clock tomorrow to do the American stream. I am your host, Peter Dabrowska. I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me and watching the show, and we'll see you tomorrow.